Welcome to SIGHTLINE Live, the podcast where we explore how live experiences can fuel year-round marketing. I'm your host, Marie-Elaine Lemire. Today, we're talking about an inspiring topic, creativity. I'm so excited to welcome Knowles, Global Head of Experiential at Canva and one of the top leaders in experiential marketing, known for bringing bold ideas to life and creating experiences that captivate audiences worldwide. Jimmy, welcome to SIGHTLINE Live.
Thank you for having me.
So you're the Global Head of Experiential at Canva, but if we rewind a bit, what did creativity look like in your life before it was your job title?
Yeah, I about 99% of my personality is being a former theater kid, full stop. That was kind of like the center of gravity for me growing up. And I always talk so much about how my experience in theater, whether that was community theater, doing it at school, taught me so much of what I bring to my job now in so many different regards, both how I interact and craft stories externally, but also how I operate with my team. It's to me, theater is it's this idea of problem solving in real time. It's the ability to trust your fellow actors on stage to catch you if you drop a line. It's like learning from those best moments in the show are often the ones that went slightly wrong and nobody noticed, but that's what makes it like a little fun and cheeky at the same time. It's this idea of delighting and thrilling an audience and developing that emotional connection with them from the stage. And I think there's something so special about that. And I really do bring so much of what I learned in the theater and in my time being on stage to the job now, again, in how I interact and collaborate with my team, and in how I craft stories for an external audience. But it wasn't, I don't know, for me, it wasn't always theater. I've kind of always been drawn to the way that things are put together, whether that's like the design of a room or a space that I'm in, or going to theme parks and understanding how they crafted the world and the user journey that people experience as they're navigating themselves through a theme park, the sequencing of playlists, honestly, and music, the way that a great restaurant makes you feel when you come in and you sit down and you experience that. And I feel like I didn't necessarily have the language for it then, but I almost feel like I was studying experience design long before I even knew that it was a career, and certainly long before it was part of my life in such a big way. So it's looked very different over the years, but I'm so happy to have seen where it's kind of like taken me and how I take all these like life lessons and applications and experiences and use them to mold the experiences that I get to build and create at Canva now. It's very magical. I tell myself often that I have my dream job, and I truly feel like I do. And I feel very lucky and fortunate that I get to do the work that I get to do every day.
It feels like you're really into something that's a passion for you. But was there a specific defining moment where you realized that the creative world could become your career?
I don't know if there was like a specific defining moment for me. It felt more honestly like this slow realization that every job I gravitated toward kind of had the same DNA to it, whether that was collaboration, live audiences, making people feel something. It always felt like the things that I gravitated towards the most were just that sense of design, experience, collaboration, emotional connection, delighting an audience was woven into the fabric, whether that was like extracurriculars that I participated in high school, whether that was, student council and figuring out how to gather my classmates, or whether that was for 4 years at Ithaca College, I was in the all-male a cappella group, and I got to produce our concerts and bring together audiences on campus for those events that we hosted on campus. And it always just felt like this natural core tenet to what I did and the things that made me so happy. And it was the storytelling for me. Like at the heart of it, it was the ability to tell stories in different ways through different formats with different audiences and thinking about how do you turn those moments into something that somebody remembers. And then, obviously coming to Canva, that realization that I could build something from scratch and I could take all these life experiences and kind of like mold and shape it into, not just building an incredible team, but building this discipline at Canva from the ground up and building an entire experiential practice. It was that kind of realization like, oh, this is it. This is theater. It's just a bigger stage now. And that notion is so exciting and empowering to me.
That's super inspiring. But being always into the creative mode, have you ever had a period you felt creatively blocked?
100%. Many periods, many moments, and I think anyone who says that they haven't is either lying or not pushing hard enough. And for me, I think creative blocks usually come when I'm too deep inside the work or like too close to the brief or too attached to the direction, or there are too many rounds of feedback. To be honest, it was one of the reasons why I ultimately left my job on the agency side. I was at an incredible agency, Civic Entertainment Group, for 10 years, and 10 years is might as well be 65 years in agency life. As I'm sure you guys know intimately, it is a grueling, hard job, especially to be in a creative field where you're constantly asked to switch direction, where you're kind of having to do this code switching from like client to client. One day your brain is on Airbnb, and the next meeting you go to 15 minutes later, you have to think about Disney. And then in the afternoon, you have to switch to HBO. And then the next week, it's something totally different. And while that like creative diversity is very exciting and thrilling and kind of helps to move you forward because you're always thinking about something different, at the same time, after 10 years on the agency side, it felt like I was like in a little bit of a hamster wheel. I kept having the same experiences with different clients. They kept asking the same questions. We found ourselves at times also like continuing to like bring up old ideas that were just like polished and given a new life a little bit. And that to me just felt like this moment where I was like, I don't know if I have anything more to give. Like I feel like I've pulled every string that I possibly could. And it wasn't that I didn't have any creativity left in me to give. It's just that I needed to shift my North Star a little bit. And coming to Canva was such a creative renaissance for me because it just opened up this whole new world. It was a totally blank canvas. And I think it allowed me to, yeah, to expand the definition of what being creative means and just think about it in a different way where I could break out of what was the norm for me for 10 years. And I think what gets me out of that kind of like creative rut is really getting out of the building, both literally and figuratively. Like I go see something. Theater is still an incredibly important part of my life. So whether that's a show, whether that's an exhibition, whether it means going to a new restaurant, that's doing something interesting or new, or like experiencing that in a different way. For example, this past summer, I went to go see, not this past summer, last year, I went to go see Masquerade in New York City. And I don't know if you or any of the listeners have gotten the opportunity to go, but I would encourage you to run, don't walk to something like Masquerade. It's, for those that don't know, it's immersive Phantom of the Opera. And it was one of the most thrilling theatrical experiences I've ever had in my life. Phantom of the Opera obviously is a creative property that everybody knows and loves, and there's so much rich, deep history with it. But it was just reimagined in this way that was so bold and so creative and so interesting that for me, it was a moment of like creative awakening. And you take little cues from these experiences. And obviously, I'm not going to do an immersive Phantom of the Opera at Canva, but thinking about the pacing of the audience and the logistics of how the show is run. When we were there one time, the fire alarm went off mid-show and they had to evacuate the entire building, which for those that don't know, in the building at any given time, the show is happening for 6 different audiences, all at 6 different points of the show. And I stood out there in the freezing cold as the show was stopped for the fire alarm and everybody had vacated. And I was just like, how in God's name are they going to get all these people back into the building back into the moment of the show that they were in and coordinate that. And they did. And I was blown away by it. But it's those little moments that, start to get your wheels turning again, whether it's in front of the curtain, whether it's behind the curtain. It kind of helps to just like reignite your brain in a different way and like alter that brain chemistry a little bit so that you're thinking a little bit differently. And it's very, very thrilling for me. And I think when you're blocked, the answer is almost never to just stare harder at the problem, right? It's to go kind of fill your tank somewhere else.
But towards the end of your journey in agency, did you know that you had to move on and leave and go to Canva, for example? Or did you realize that this was what you needed once you were at Canva?
Yeah. It was really scary. Honestly, it was a place that Civic was an agency. I grew up there, right? Like I really cut my teeth in the industry. I made some of my closest friendships and deepest connections with different brands, with partners, with different leaders. So it wasn't something that I necessarily knew that I needed. I knew I needed a change, and I knew I needed to like break out of what felt like normal and comfortable for me in order to be a little bit vulnerable and to be a little bit scared. And like I think pushing into that area, into that space of being uncomfortable and being scared and being a little bit vulnerable is sometimes when your deepest creative powers can get unlocked. And I truly feel that that's what I experienced in coming to Canva. It took pushing me to that place of being a little bit scared and nervous to unlock something different, and coming in completely cold to a space like Canva. I did not know anyone at the company except for the incredible Natalie Schwartz, who was our global head of brand marketing at the time, who I worked with at Airbnb, who brought me over. So it was a whole new group of people. It was a whole new group of creative guidelines. It was a whole new brand that I had not experienced before. It was a whole new leadership team. And it was a completely blank canvas. Like everybody was looking at me to be like, okay, cool, you're here. How do we do this? And that was equal parts thrilling, daunting, challenging, terrifying, but invigorating first and
Mhm.
foremost. And I've fully embraced the challenge over the past 4 years of working with Canva, and I'm so happy for the work that myself and the team have gotten to do here, in the time we've gotten to do it.
And we see the projects you're working on, and it's just amazing. It's always evolving, and honestly, I just hope I can be invited at some point to your activations or your events.
The
Um,
invite is always open for you, Marie-Elaine. It's always open, please.
Thank you. But how has your definition of creative excellence evolved over time?
Yeah. Um, I think early in my career, I thought that creative excellence really meant the big idea, right? It's what is the concept that you're gonna walk into the room and mic drop and everyone's gonna go, whoa. And I do think that still matters, but now I think creative excellence is really about the consistency of intent. It's not just about the headline moment, right? It's paying attention to um, both the bathroom signage at your event and making sure that that has the same level of care as the keynote. And I do think I say a lot the devil is in the details, right? And I feel that deeply as we craft experiences at Canva. And we talk a lot about experience being identity. It's not an activation. It's not a campaign beat. It truly is identity. And I feel very proud that over the past 4 years, some of the most profound expressions of the Canva brand have come through the brand experiences that we've created, whether that's Canva Create, whether that's launching a beverage line called Canva Creative Juices, and finding these different iterations of how the brand comes to life puts this giant puzzle together of what identity means for the brand. And when you think about it that way, creative excellence isn't just one big idea. It's about 1,000 small decisions that all point kind of in the same direction towards that same North Star. Um, yeah, so it's been a journey and continues to be a journey.
But your team is working on such big events and activation. There's a lot of pressure and logistics that goes into it. How does your team nurture creativity when everybody's kind of also pressured to deliver.
Yeah. I'll be transparent in saying it is not easy, right? Like I would love to yeah, I would love to say that we've got free reign and we think big, and we do, but at the same time we also have the very real pressures of being a pre-IPO company and looking at the bottom line of the business and making sure that experiential is sharpening our ROI and telling a story about how we're supporting the bottom line. It's challenging to find that balance of making sure that we are both bringing the rigor of what the business needs and what's going to move us forward, and making sure that we have wide open white space to be wildly creative all the time. I try to do a couple things. One, I try to protect the space for bad ideas. We, as much as we can, and the team again is very busy. It always feels like we're sprinting towards the next thing, and there's never enough time to do the things that we need to do. But um, trying to make sure that the team is not afraid to pitch something dumb, because I think if they are scared to be in that place, they'll never pitch something brilliant. I think a really good example of this is at Advertising Week just last year, we hosted an executive dinner for 75 folks at this space where we did projection mapping. And the brilliant Gideon Spitzer Williams on my team came to the table with this idea that he worked in collaboration with our agency partners at Public School on, of this spaghetti oracle. And I remember like hearing about it secondhand at first, and he was like, we're going to pitch you on this idea. It's a little bit out there. But it was essentially, we talk a lot about being able to throw spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? And again, that kind of ties back into the space for creative freedom and being able to just take creative swings and see what hits, what misses. But this idea for the spaghetti oracle was literally having somebody who was dressed as the spaghetti oracle, this kind of like all-knowing being, and the attendee would walk up to different bowls of painted spaghetti. They would put on a lab coat, they had gloves on, they would dip their hands in the bowls of spaghetti and literally throw spaghetti at the wall, at a canvas that we had given them. And after they were done kind of like picking which color spaghetti they threw and how they threw it and the way that it landed on the canvas, the spaghetti oracle would then give them their creative reading. And that to me was one of the most thrilling and exciting concepts I feel like that we've brought into experiential before. But instead of laughing it off, we all leaned in. And I think that became one of our most talked about activations, and certainly was incredibly memorable for the folks in the room. So that was a long-winded way of saying I try and create space for bad ideas that ultimately become exceptional ideas as much as we can. And the second piece is I try very hard to lead with trust, not approval. Which is hard because admittedly I am a complete control freak, as I'm sure my team will tell you. But I think by now the team also knows me so well to understand like the things that I'm not going to like, the things that make me tick, the things that I'm going to push them on. And leading with that trust, not approval, means that the team doesn't necessarily always feel like they need to run every decision by me, right? They know the identity, they know my standards, they know the vibe, they know our brand. And I think that when people feel trusted, they create bolder work. So that's something that we try and foster across the entire company, honestly. But yeah, with the team in particular, because I do think that moves us forward.
So to come with those ideas, do you have like brainstorming tables? Do you all regroup and just brainstorm together? Is there a specific process to come to those crazy fun ideas?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the process evolves and changes. It evolves depending on how busy we are at the time. We do have a weekly meeting. We are the dream team. So our weekly dream team meetings, we all get together once a week and we share things that are challenging for us. We share updates on the projects that we're working across. We share hurdles that we've run into that we can help each other to try and circumnavigate, whether that is those are logistical hurdles from like admin processes we're getting stuck up against, or how to unstick stakeholders on certain concepts or ideas, or it could be creative challenges that we're facing. We have a problem in front of us. We have a brief that we've been given. We have a way in with a campaign that we're trying to solve for, and we try and put our heads together as much as we can. And sometimes that's all of us as a group. Sometimes that's just like break off cohorts of like 2 or 3 of us trying to brainstorm and jam. Sometimes we'll bring in other folks from the marketing mix as well, to be a part of that process with us, whether that's teams from campaigns or partnerships or a product marketing team. We try and make the creative process all inclusive, because I do think different teams will come at problems from different angles and bring different things to the table to help us create solutions for some of the creative challenges that we're facing. So it totally depends, and we've done everything that you could possibly imagine to try and unstick and unbreak those creative challenges. And to me, that's the most thrilling part of the process, right? It's just like getting all these brains and individuals in a room to solve a problem together, and to just, again, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. It's really exciting for us.
It's so exciting. But from your experience, what do you think kills creativity fastest inside any organization?
It's a fabulous question. Consensus, I think, which is quite direct, but like the more people who need to approve an idea, I think the less interesting it becomes. Every round of approvals, it feels like sometimes just like sands off a little bit of an edge that you have in the creative concept, and to the point where sometimes you're left with something that offends no one and excites no one, which is never a place that you want to be. So I think, and I feel very grateful that our leadership team has put so much trust and faith in our team and in the processes that we've built, and in our creative judgment, to know that we're always looking after the brand, to know that we are always thinking about the customer at every turning point, to know that we are always have the best intentions in the mind, that we're always being true to ourselves. And I feel like with that trust comes the creative freedom to do more without going through a million rounds of approval. But I do think, in my experience, not just at Canva, but beyond, that idea of consensus and bring in a million different stakeholders to advise on an idea is what ultimately gets it whittled down to something that feels uninspiring, certainly not as creative as maybe it had originally started. Yeah, and I think beyond that too, I think one of the other things that kind of kills a great creative concept is optimizing for the wrong metric too early, which is important. But when somebody asks, like, how will we measure that before the idea has even had the chance to breathe, it feels like you've already lost the plot a little bit. And I'm not saying measurement doesn't matter, because it is arguably the most important part of our job and what we can be doing to show success and ROI for the business. We take it incredibly seriously. But if measurement is the first filter that every idea passes through, you are only ever going to be producing safe, predictable work, because it will feel you're always going to be leaning on like, what is safe? What do we know will deliver results? And that safe, predictable work doesn't always move people, in my experience.
I couldn't agree more, especially on the first piece when you mentioned that when there's too many stakeholders, it can really hurt an idea to really flourish. But this leads me to ask you, how do you balance brand consistency with creative risk? Because you guys are taking risk, right, with those activations. How do you how can you make sure that you stay aligned with the brand?
It's a really good question. And I think oftentimes most people frame it as attention, right? Like consistency and risk are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I actually think they're kind of the same thing when you do it right. And if you're really clear on who you are as a brand, for example, then creative risk isn't risky. It's just a very bold expression of something true. And I think a really good example of this is our enterprise rap battle, which I'm sure, or I hope, or maybe not, many listeners may have heard of or caught wind of on the internet. But we made we had a rap battle at Canva Create about launching our enterprise software, right? That was a very big creative risk. And, part of that process was like, we were thinking about, we've got this on paper what is a very boring concept of launching Canva Enterprise. And the people that care the most about us launching Canva Enterprise really want to know about how it's integrating into their existing software. It's not a very sexy thing to launch and to talk about. So we decided to do it through a rap battle, and the internet roasted us. Over 50 million, 60 million, 50 million views, I think, in 48 hours, and a 2,500% increase in social conversation. Um, so at the end of the day, everybody was talking about Canva Enterprise. So it was like, check that box. And I don't know. For me, I think one of the things about that process that was so valuable is that it was completely, unmistakably Canva. We took a major swing. We knew that it was going to be very polarizing. We knew that people were really going to love it and be into it and be like, oh my God, that is so Canva. Or they were really going to hate it and call it so cringe. And we had both ends of the spectrum. But we weren't trying to be cool. We weren't trying to like have an edge. We were genuinely just being ourselves. That is our brand. And I think Cliff, our co-founder, took to LinkedIn after that and basically said we chose to be different. We chose not to take ourselves too seriously, and we do it again. And we did. We doubled down, and we will continue to double down. Last year at Canva Create, we closed the show with a Broadway style musical number with a gospel choir and a marching band and another rap woven in. And we're going to continue to be unapologetically ourselves again and again and again. And to me, that's brand consistency and creative risk at the same time. That's when they meet.
I mean, I feel it's totally you as well. The Broadway show style and the marching band. That's really amazing. But how do you know when an idea is just good versus culturally resonant?
I think a good idea makes sense on a brief. And I think a culturally resonant idea makes people feel something that they didn't expect to feel. And that difference is usually that kind of like emotional surprise. Um, when we closed Canva Create with this big musical number and 4,500 people standing and singing along, that that to me wasn't just a good closing moment. It was culturally resonant because it tapped into something a little bit deeper, the sense of the joy of creating together, the kind of that courage that comes with like being earnest in a world that rewards cynicism at times. Um, After that kind of like closing musical number last year, Fast Company called it a defiant mic drop. Their words, not mine. And I think you can't really plan for that kind of reaction, though we really wanted it. But you can create the conditions for it by being brave enough to take those risks and to do something that, yeah, may feel like a little bit too much, but again, at the end of the day, is unmistakably you. And I'm very, very proud of that.
And nowadays, how has AI changed the way you think about originality? Because this is a big topic right now.
I think AI has made the question of originality more important, not less, right? And I talk about this a lot. When everybody has access to the same tools and the same speed, the differentiator becomes taste, right? It's point of view. It's the willingness to make a choice that a machine wouldn't make. And what I find really exciting is that AI is removing that friction between imagination and execution. It's the gap between I have an idea and I made the thing is shrinking rapidly. But I think the idea still has to be worth making. And that is a fundamentally human question, right? AI can help you build faster, it can iterate faster, visualize faster, but it can't tell you what's worth building in the first place. That's still on us. And we at Canva, certainly we believe that a human heartbeat is going to remain at the center of every good idea, full stop. AI will not replace that. Human creativity is essential to the creative process. And we really look at AI as being your powerful co-pilot, and that's something that is deeply embedded into the product, into how we build the product, into how we bring the product to life, into how we build our experiential activations. It's incredibly important.
Hmm. And if we talk a little bit more about events, brands often default to scale, bigger booth, bigger screen. What do you think actually makes the biggest impact?
For me, I actually don't think spectacle for spectacle's sake um is like a bit of a nothing burger, right? Like if you're just building for making sure that you're getting the Instagram likes or making sure that you're creating photo moments for people to capture social content, that isn't necessarily moving the needle from an emotional perspective. Um, I think what resonates the most is first and foremost starting with the why, and that's how we start every single one of our briefs at Canva. We start with looking at what is the emotional reaction or what is the feeling that we want somebody to walk away with. And unless you can go through the entire customer journey of something that you've built and justify how somebody is coming out at the end with that emotional connection, you're not really doing your job. So that's really what we always try and lean in with and lead with when we're thinking through how we bring our experiences to life. I think it's the most important thing that any brand can be doing. And I always say a lot too that, like, especially when we're working with our agency partners, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people come to the table and say you don't have enough budget to do what you want to do. While that may be true sometimes, or they'll say like we can't execute anything here because you don't have enough money to do it. I think some of the greatest ideas and some of the smartest ideas don't require $500,000 to execute, right? They can be free. I think some of the smartest creative concepts that we've seen come through and win at Cannes Lions and all these award shows aren't necessarily the ones that are spending millions and millions of dollars. It certainly helps in some instances, but it doesn't take budget to be deeply creative, to think about how you're eliciting a deep emotional reaction out of a consumer. And I think some of the best creative ideas are free and should be. Um, and I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Totally. I mean, this conversation is so interesting. I think it's one of my favorite topic, and you've been so generous giving your answers and sharing your thoughts. Before we wrap this conversation, I really want to do a quick lighting round with you. So first instinct, no overthinking. I'm gonna ask you six questions. I just want to
Okay.
get your quick answers. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
ready? So
Yeah.
creative mornings or late night ideas?
Oh, creative mornings. I'm such a morning person. I'm usually in bed by 9 p.m., to be totally honest. 9 p.m., 9:30, at least laying there, probably doom scrolling for another 3 hours. But I love a morning. I love waking up early. I love kind of just like getting the day started. So I'm a big morning guy.
Hmm. Big brainstorm room or solo walk with headphones?
Uh, Solo walk with headphones. I love the creative energy of being in a big room with a lot of people, but I sometimes get very overwhelmed. So I usually like to start my creative process like kind of very internal. Um, and then I like to bring others into the fold. Like once I've been able to like form my opinion a little bit, then use others' inputs to kind of like expand on the ideas to help me unlock new things. But I usually like to start solo.
Hmm. So one creative risk you think more B2B brands should take?
Uh, um, B2B doesn't have to be boring. I we talk a lot about Canva about how we are approaching B2B in a different way, right? And I think a lot of brands sometimes feel like they need to change their personality when they walk in a room that's more B2B oriented. And it's to us, it's not about like putting on the blazer and the tie when you're talking to a B2B audience. It's about being unapologetically, unmistakably yourself in every room you're in, no matter who the audience is. And I think our B2B audience has responded to that very well because I think it's really important for us to consider that at the end of the day, the B2B audience, when they take off their, CIO hat or when they take off their knowledge worker hat, they're a regular consumer as well, and they want to be treated that way. And we've seen so much positive, incredible response coming from us approaching B2B in that way. And I think it's really important for every brand to take note of.
Humans are humans. Um,
Totally.
a trend you're ready to see disappear right now.
Oh God. Uh, that's a hard one. I mean, this isn't experiential related.
Well, it can be anything.
I'm tired of run clubs. I don't know. I'm just like, sometimes I walk outside and I see these like large groups of people running, and I'm just like, calm down. I'm ready to see run clubs die.
Do you run? Maybe that's why.
No,
That's why.
no, not at all. That is why. No shade to any of the runners out there. I'm just like, enough with your run clubs. Go to brunch, you know?
Oh my God. Gut feeling or data driven?
Gut feeling.
Mm,
Always.
I could,
Always.
I can see that. And trendy or timeless?
Timeless. I mean, both, honestly, but I don't know. My gut reaction there was to say timeless, because I think there's so much value in, in creative that feels timeless and like it belongs and not just of the moment. There's value in both, certainly, but big fan of timeless.
Okay, I'm adding one brand that you're following on social media that inspires you right now.
I mean, I have such a brand crush on Pinterest. Judy Lee is a very good friend, and I think the work that they're doing over on the Pinterest side is brilliant. And I'm inspired by them every day. And also Gap. Um, the renaissance of Gap over the past several years has been fascinating to watch, and what they're doing from a marketing perspective. And I think they've taken some really interesting creative risks and executed some really bold campaigns that have really moved the needle from a consumer perspective, in terms of what the brand used to be and what it is today. I think what they're doing is brilliant.
I'm such a Gap girl. If
Yeah, same.
Gap hears me,
Gap.
like, yeah, call me. If Gap hears me, call me. I can, yeah,
Same. I'll model. I'll put
yeah.
on the jeans, whatever you want. I'm in.
Exactly.
A Canva
Uh,
Gap collab when I'm asking for it, begging for it.
we have the next concept here. Love it.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, do you have any tips or guidance for marketers trying to develop or nurture their creativity?
Yeah. I mean, I said it earlier, but like, get out of the building, go touch grass. There's so much creative inspiration sitting out in the world at every turn, in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect or you wouldn't anticipate. And I encourage people to get out to experience things again, whether that is an immersive theater show, whether that's a concert, a theme park, trying a new restaurant, going to the art exhibit that just opened. You will find creative inspiration in the most unlikely of places sometimes. And I think when you're not looking for it is often when it comes the most.
I'm going to be looking into Masquerade for sure.
You must run, do not walk. It will change how you look at theater forever.
Run, but not in a run club. Just run.
Yeah, run. Yeah, run by
No.
yourself.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. It was so nice to chat with you again. And thank you so
Yes.
much for all the generous insights. I mean, this conversation was so inspiring.
The pleasure is all mine. Marie-Elaine, thank you so much for having me.